Hello, I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome to the ESS BIZTOOLS Business Advisory Services podcast. Today, I'm joined by Brad Smart, the Managing Director of Sowing the Message, and that's the name of a very interesting book that Brad's written, Sowing the Message. How are you today, Brad?
I'm very well, Peter. Thank you.
Brad, this podcast is primarily targeted at accountants, business advisors, bookkeepers, and some chief financial officers who are serving the small, medium enterprise market. And there might be some other business people listening to find out what accountants get up to. But generally, we're talking to accountants. And obviously, you're an experienced businessman that's had a lot of dealings with accountants over the years.
I certainly have. Yes, we had them with I owned a series of radio stations, and we had some fairly heavy accounting obligations, including auditing, during that period. We also had film companies, and they also needed some pretty good tax advice and advice on expansion, which we received from our accountants. So it was a good period.
And besides the radio industry, you've had a fair bit of experience in the TV industry.
Yes, yeah. I've been news director in Canberra and deputy news director in Melbourne and chief of staff of Channel 9 Melbourne. So I did my bones back in the early days, and then I started my own company and built up to the point that we could buy our own radio network.
Right. That's probably a story for another time, going through that journey.
There's a lot of stories involved in that, I can tell you. We'll dine out on them.
Yes. Brad, what we're looking at here then is accountants, bookkeepers, business advisors, chief financial officers. How do they communicate? How do they use this technology that's now available? We got Zoom, we got more exposure than what business people have ever had. What do you think accountants should be doing with this technology and resources that are now there?
Well, I think the technology gives them a heck of an advantage over 20 years ago. It certainly brings people a lot closer. During our time in business, which goes through from the 80s to the present, we've dealt with some of the top accountants, the big firms like Grant Thornton. And we've also dealt with small firms, and we're currently with a small firm, and it's only got probably 3 or 4 partners. And they all have different types of needs. And one of the big companies, like the Grant Thorntons, the Ernst & Youngs, which are obviously bigger still, and the PwC, they have entire communications departments, so they really do take advantage of the technology that's there. They also have marketing departments that feed from the communications department. Now, small operations can't afford that. What they have to rely on is the necessity of either doing their own communications or bringing in freelancers to give them a helping hand along the way, just to do the job that they need at the time. Keeping in touch with your clients is critical, regardless of whatever size business you have. And you need systems to do that, because systems, if you put them in place properly, are repeatable and they're scalable, so that you can start off very small with a communication strategy. But if that system for that communication strategy is well thought out, it can be enlarged and scaled up at any time, but it also should be repeatable. So, for example, take an electronic newsletter. You set up the format for it. You can repeat it time after time, every quarter or every month. There's those sort of actions that people need to think about, even in the smallest of accounting firms where it's a one-man practice. There are people out there, and they're generally not very expensive in terms of just paying them for the job, as opposed to having them on staff, who can do a lot of that work for accountants, even in the smallest of practices.
Right. So what would they be doing? Producing newsletters and blog articles and.
Well, exactly right. You see, you can start off small. You can you really should be using social media. I generally say about communications strategies that it's about filling up the hopper. Every business, and regardless of whether they're accountants or bricklayers or small building firms or whatever, they have to keep that marketing going to keep that hopper filled up, because every business experiences clients dropping out the bottom of the hopper. And if you don't keep topping it up, and you just arrogantly, if you like, go along and say, oh, I got plenty of business, I don't need to worry, they'll drop out the bottom to the point that you're no longer viable. And so you really have to be looking at some form of communication / marketing to keep that hopper at least at a viable level, and hopefully at a highly profitable level. And okay, if you say, well, the hopper is going to fill up so that it'll be spilling over the top, well, fine. You can go and employ a couple of locums. You can bring in another accountant on a part-time basis to handle the overflow work, or other practitioners, depending on what you need. But if you don't do it, you're going to end up without any business. You can be in business as a self-practitioner for so long, but if you don't keep marketing, you don't keep talking to your clients, you don't let your clients know what you've done, what you can do, and what you're moving into, then you've got a problem where you're going to lose them to your competitors.
Well, that's a very interesting concept that you've been talking about then, Brad, because in the accounting market at present, I know from the contacts I'm having with accountants, and I'm definitely hearing it from people all over the countryside, that most accountants are saying they're very busy. They're not renewing subscriptions to services, and some of them services like ours and other people that supply services, because they're claiming they're too busy. Would you think that they need to think that through as far as their promotion?
That's the time that they should be involved in subscriptions and learning more. I know it puts a strain on your time, because if you're busy, you're working flat out. But I think learning new skills, starting to diversify into areas when you've got that cash flow. Because if you say, I'm extremely busy, I can't take on any more clients, really, that's the time that your cash flow should be at its optimum. And with that, you can subscribe to services like yours and like various other information services that will improve the quality of the services that you as an accountant would offer. And that's when you need to be doing things like communications, because everything is cyclical. I mean, just look at the stock market. You're having a win for 2 months, and then all of a sudden the grass is pulled from under your feet. Well, that's going to happen everywhere, in accountancy as well. You'll have this period where you can't do anything wrong, and the clients just keep coming in asking you to do things for them, and then suddenly there'll be a dearth of there'll just be no work to be done, and that's when it gets very, very nasty. That's so. In preparation for that, you should be marketing now. You should be getting out there and doing communications now. You can use people in your local area to do some of your communications. There'll be web builders there. There'll be graphic artists. You can get videos done generally on a regional basis, maybe not in the smallest of towns around the country, to the level that you'd really want to do them. So, all those marketing things that an accountant might need to do should be done when they're flush with work, when they've got no time to spare. That's the time. What do they say? If you haven't got time, ask a busy man. And that's really what it's about. You've just got to make time to keep building your business. And maybe that's the time when you've got so much work going through that your whole business becomes scalable. You bring on other people, but then you eventually have to feed them with work. And so communications and marketing and what brings that work in. Now, word of mouth can be very helpful, but sometimes you have to be proactive.
Yes, and that leads me to another matter which I wanted to share with you today. As you know, and many of our listeners know, I've been quite emphatic on the benefit for accountants to get involved in advising clients on crowdsource funding equity raising. And I noticed in the Financial Review about 6 or 7 weeks ago, an article which quoted the joint founder of Equitize, who are one of the major crowdsource funding equity raising intermediaries based in Sydney, who indicated that he and the other people advising had noticed that they were only handling about 5% of the people who made an initial inquiry. In other words, they were rejecting 95%. And I thought about that and said, well, what's going on here? Does that mean that these people didn't turn up with business plans, budgets, and cash flows? Or did they turn up with them and they were not of sufficient standard? Does it mean that the accountants are not telling their clients that they could have helped them on this work and that the business owners just going off direct themselves? When you talk about accountants should still be communicating when they're busy, is this one of the results of them not communicating that they're interested in doing some diversified activities?
Well, I'm sure there'll always be a percentage of cheapskates who want to try and bypass their accountants and not have to pay their fees to do something like crowdsource funding. But I would think that they're in the minority by a long shot. You know, you'd have to say less than 10, 20% of them would do it just out of their own, off their own volition, to save money. I think most of them would want to go through their accountants, but I think this is where accountancy practices can fall down by not telling their clients that they're capable of doing this work. Now, I would suspect then that other accountants would come in and tell the general marketplace through either social media marketing or maybe it's print advertising or whatever, that they're capable of doing these services. And people, if they don't know that your business can handle that you now have the skills to do crowdsource funding or export grants or wherever it happens to be, they'll say, oh, but this group does. So they'll go off and try that group. And the next thing, the original accountant has lost their business because these people have developed faith in the new business that says they can actually do these export grants or crowdsource funding. Now, it's important, therefore, that every accountancy practice, even from a one-man operation, keeps their clients informed of what they can do. It's marketing, but it's very easy marketing. You can do it with emails. You can do it with social media. You could do it with blogs and articles on LinkedIn, although, not every client would see that necessarily, but some people who could be clients may see that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you just never know where people are going to come across this information when it's out there in the general marketplace, particularly if you're taking advantage of social media. I don't know about you, Peter, but I'm spending a lot of time going through LinkedIn, going through Facebook, although I've got to say Facebook drives me nuts from time to time these days. But I'm looking all the time for new ideas in the social media marketplace, and so are many, many others.
Yeah.
I've invested recently in some in some cryptocurrency. And I thought, oh, pretty cool. At my age, investing in cryptocurrency. We've had guys coming in here at home doing some work on the house. Every one of them's got cryptocurrency.
Right. Okay.
They're all in their 30s.
Yeah.
It's what's happening there is that word of mouth has spread the new technology everywhere. And that's what happens when you do marketing for any size business. The more marketing you do, the more you get the word out there. But then you leave yourself open to more word of mouth spreading. So it's, I think accountants that aren't out there with a communication strategy of some sort, and hope is not a strategy. It's got to be a defined, I will do a newsletter every quarter for my clients. I will post every week on Facebook, whatever it happens to be. No strategy is a bad strategy as long as there's a strategy in place to start getting the message about your business out there. I think that's the key.
Okay, very interesting. I think we've talked about a fair number of things. At one stage, you had developed an academy to help people with communications. Is that still going?
Well, I train a lot of people. As you know, I train a lot of TV journos on how to present on TV. I've also trained a lot of business executives and senior public servants in how to do public speaking. It's probably a case of those who can't do teach. But the thing is, we've got some very good results because, I've spent the last 40 years as a film director, and I've worked with a lot of actors, and those skills I've been able to take into the marketplace to help senior executives become better public speakers, and not only senior executives, virtually anybody. We're seeing a lot of good results, as I said, with TV journos now that are starting to really make their careers work for them.
So this would be beneficial for some accountants, wouldn't it?
Well, it would, yeah. If they're worried about how they speak, or they get a bit nervous up there on the podium, I'm only too happy to help them there. If they want some help with their general communications plans, hey, I'm only too happy to take calls and chat through with them what they should be doing.
Okay. Righto then, Brad, thank you very much for your time today. I think we've covered most of the issues. Do you got anything else you'd wanted to offer?
Well, I just think that it's worth every accountancy practice, and I've said this obviously before, developing a communications plan that is part of their overall marketing plan. Set some goals. Yes, maybe a newsletter every quarter, an electronic newsletter, maybe the social media blogs. It could be daily, but weekly would be fine. Just get out there and particularly in things like LinkedIn, where you can write opinion pieces that make you the reference expert on particular topics. I mean, it might be capital gains tax. It might be export grants. It might be crowdsource funding. It could be any of those topics. But by posting that, you're putting yourself out in the marketplace and lifting your profile. People love to work with experts, i.e., lawyers, accountants, people who are serving their non-core needs, who have a reputation.
Yeah.
And a positive reputation, obviously, but they have a reputation that they know something about the area in which you're consulting them.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for joining us for this podcast today, Brad. And I look forward to talking to you again at some time in the future.
Okay, Peter,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having me.
Have a great day. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.